Hi there, it's James from narugbydb.com, and I'm back to make another video now that the 2025 Major League Rugby season is done. I haven't made a video since before the season, since the middle of February, which was my conference predictions. I'll be probably making a video and reacting to that because I got some of that quite wrong. This time I wanted to just make a little video about the 2025 championship game. I was at the game. I was in fact there with all of this stuff. I want to let you know, my thoughts on the game itself, the arena, the fan fest, what I think could be done better, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just thought I'd make a video because it's easier to do it than write. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and if you guys were also at the game, let me know if you agree with me, disagree, or let me know if there's stuff that you liked or disliked about the 2025 Major League Rugby Championship game in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. So let's dig in and let's start with the game itself and the stadium. So the game was played at Centreville Bank Stadium in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, just outside of Providence, the home of Rhode Island FC of the USL, the second tier on the US soccer football pyramid behind the MLS. It's the stadium of a second tier football team, Rhode Island FC, sorry, soccer, and its capacity is 10,500, which shows you just how far soccer has come in the United States. And hopefully, rugby will be able to get to that point some point soon. But remember, MLS took about 20 years to take off. Centreville Bank Stadium was finished in May of this year, like 2 months ago. It is a brand new stadium, and you can tell it's a beautiful stadium. The pitch is immaculate. The facilities are incredible. It's perfect for a MLR final, being a 10,000 seat stadium. It's a stunning venue. It's really it's clean. It's tidy. It's smart. It's state of the art. It's great. I have no complaints about the stadium itself. The seats were comfy. The seats all had cup holders. Like, it was great. It was a really good stadium. Suppose the only kind of downside, I think, was the merch selection at the stadium. I did go into the Rhode Island FC team store there, and they did have some MLR stuff on the walls, which I was quite pleased about and quite impressed by. But it was all just kind of MLR Championship branded black, no name sort of stuff. The range was a bit disappointing, and there were no prices, which did not help. I just think it makes sense to have some merch for both the teams competing in the game at the stadium. The Free Jacks were able to haul down a load of merch from Quincy because they were just up the road, but there was nothing for the SaberCats. I just think it makes sense to have merch for both MLR and the two competing teams at the final. Let's talk about the game. It was the New England Free Jacks going after their third championship in the three-peat, playing the Houston SaberCats, the Western Conference champions, who before this year had not won a postseason game in MLR. The game was fantastic. I was sat fairly close to the First Regiment, the Free Jacks fan group. Being in Rhode Island, just down the road from Quincy, from Fort Quincy, there were a lot of Free Jacks fans there, and they were really bringing the energy. It probably helped that their team was never behind in this game. But that doesn't mean it was a bad game. The game was very back and forth. The Free Jacks kept trying to pull away from the SaberCats, but the SaberCats kept reeling them back in. The margin of victory was kind of expanding and shrinking, expanding and shrinking. There was one point where it was 13-3 to the Free Jacks quite early in the game. I thought, if this is going to stay this way, there's a bit of an anticlimax. But it didn't. The SaberCats fought back and put in a good performance. Didn't go their way, though. The Free Jacks were, in case you've been living under a rock, the Free Jacks won their third championship and completed the three-peat for the 2025 MLR Shield. Quick jump cut. It's the next day, and I have a dog. So now that we've talked about, we've touched on the game and how high quality it was, and congratulations to the New England Free Jacks for completing the first three-peat in American sports in over 20 years, unless you count the National Lacrosse League. And they are the model MLR organization. They have 3 shields now. They have more than any other team. They stand alone, and they are deserving of it. That is the class organization in the league at the minute. But yeah, like I said, now we've chatted about that, let's talk about how many people actually saw the game. I don't believe there's been official ratings released for the TV viewing on ESPN2, but I have seen some things flying around saying it didn't even make the list of what was broadcast, which means it was It was not in the top 10. It was, I've heard various rumors of under 70,000, under 50,000, some around 30,000 viewers on ESPN2 for the final, which is really not very good. I think off the top of my head, last year's was about 200,000 viewers. So to have this as, maybe 30,000, 50,000, something like that, is really disappointing. I've got to say, I'm watching from outside the US. I'm actually in Canada, so I don't experience any of the ESPN viewing any of the ESPN Plus or ESPN2. I get to watch through the Rugby Network. From what I've heard, it doesn't seem like this ESPN deal is particularly beneficial for the league. It doesn't look like ESPN is pushing it at all, and it doesn't really look like MLR is getting anything in the way of exposure from this deal. It seems like ESPN Plus games are quite kind of down a rabbit hole to find. ESPN2 games, there's way off of six figures watching it. You guys let me know below if you think the ESPN deal is good or bad so far. Because I like I said, I'm not watching from inside the US, so I don't feel like I can really give a definitive answer on that. But from what I've heard, it does not seem like it's beneficial for the league and really exposing the MLR to more fans. And it's quite disappointing given how I've just talked about how great a game it was against two fantastic sides. It's quite disappointing to see how low the actual TV ratings were. Now that brings me on quite nicely to the attendance, the number of fans that were actually there on the day. So, as I mentioned earlier, Centreville Bank Stadium has a capacity of just over 10,000, which is about level with where the finals attendance for MLR have been the last few years. 2023 in Chicago, the last final I was at, was just over 10,000. The 2024 final in San Diego was just over 12,000, which I think is either the highest or second highest attended MLR game ever. So the attendance in Rhode Island for the 2025 MLR Championship was 5,702. So just over half capacity of the Centreville Bank Stadium. So Veterans Memorial Field in Quincy, I've been there, it's fantastic. It has a capacity of about 5,000. And the Free Jacks are packing that every single game. That stadium, Fort Quincy, is bursting at the seams. It's always full, always loud. And well, I'm not saying the Free Jacks fans didn't turn up in droves because Centreville Bank Stadium was loud, but it wasn't full. You'll see, I'll put a picture up here of some of the stands. The main stand that has RIFC in the seats, that wasn't open. There wasn't tickets sold for that. There was no one sat there. The lower, I suppose you'd call it a lower bowl, that seemed pretty full to like 80, 90% full. But I guess that big stand is what makes up the bulk of the capacity of the arena, and that just wasn't. They didn't sell tickets for it. I don't know whether there was just not enough tickets sold to open that. I really doubt it was a conscious decision to not sell tickets to the biggest stand in the stadium, which means, or at least suggests, that they just didn't sell that many tickets. Now let's have a quick think. Why could that be? So, 4.5 to 5,000 people come to a Free Jacks game every single time they're playing at Fort Quincy. Let's assume that the vast majority of those are going to buy tickets for Pawtucket, especially as their team was playing in the game. So let's say a few can't come. That's probably 4,000, 4,500 right there. Over the last few seasons, I've thought that the Free Jacks were outgrowing Fort Quincy pretty quickly. And once Free Jacks fans got a chance to go to a bigger arena to see their team play for a championship, there wasn't that many more that did. Possibly less did. So maybe Fort Quincy is okay for them. I'm not sure. Maybe it is the right size. I've already mentioned that I think that the venue itself of Centreville Bank Stadium is superb and is perfect for an MLR final. Let's widen that a little bit and think about the host city. Rhode Island officially is in Pawtucket. This shirt here says Pawtucket, Rhode Island. So let's just run through the host cities for MLR finals from 2018 to now. San Diego, California in 2018, San Diego, California in 2019, LA, California 2021. There was no final in 2020. New York City in 2022, Chicago in 2023, San Diego, California again 2024. That one was at Snapdragon. 2025, Rhode Island. One of these things is not like the others. I remember this when they first announced the venue. A lot of people were like, "Huh, Rhode Island?" Like it was really, really left field choice. And please don't get me wrong, this isn't to disparage against Rhode Island or anything like that. Um, but it's not as much of a destination as, San Diego, California, LA, California, New York City, Chicago. It's just not at that same level. And I can understand that it wants to kind of raise its profile and wants to host more events like this, but it doesn't have that reputation yet. And I think that might have put quite a few people off. Quite a few people, they might have tried to make a holiday out of it as well. Like I know I went with my partner into the 2023 final in Chicago, and we made a weekend out of it. She'd never been to Chicago before, so we made a weekend out of it. Rhode Island, I just don't know enough about because it's not as much of a tourist destination. And when you consider again that it's not even in Providence, I was there for the game, but I didn't set foot in Providence once. Rhode Island as a kind of a transit hub isn't very good. I mentioned earlier there's no direct flights for me to get from Toronto to Providence. I would have had to go through Washington DC. Instead, I flew direct to Boston, and this brings me on to my next big issue of where to stay. So I ended up staying at a hotel near enough to Fenway Park, actually in Boston. And that's because in Pawtucket there is one hotel, and it's sort of like a Holiday Inn type hotel near the stadium. So there's one hotel for thousands of fans traveling down to Pawtucket for this game. One. Now Providence does have loads of hotels. I'll admit that. But Providence is a pain for me to get to, and for, people flying in from across the US, for example, from Houston, it's probably just as difficult for them to get to Pawtucket or Providence as it would be for me. There doesn't seem to be that many direct flights into Rhode Island. I ended up staying near Fenway, which means I had to rely on the Providence Stoughton train line, which ran sort of what felt like when it wanted to. Sometimes it was, an hour between trains. Sometimes it was 2.5. Sometimes it was 3. It doesn't really seem like there's any kind of logic to that. But that was my lifeline to get to and from my hotel. Otherwise, I just couldn't do anything. If I missed this one train, I'm stranded. That's really what it was. So I really had to keep an eye on the time and really be conscious of where I'm going, when, how to get tickets, all of that stuff, just to get to and from the game and the fan zone, which I will touch on because that's great. But stuff like this is just my experience doing it. A lot of stuff like this is going to put fans off. I do it because I love MLR and I love doing this, and I've made it a hobby of mine. But other people, especially if they're traveling with family and with kids and everything, stuff like that is going to put people off. I think these games need to be either in better transit hubs or announced way before it was. The MLR final for 2025 was actually announced before Centreville Bank Stadium was even finished in May 2025. The reason for that is probably before announcing it, they wanted to make sure that the stadium would be finished on time for the final, which I can understand to some degree. But when you're planning an event like this in a city that doesn't have particularly great transit connections, people need as much time as they can get to plan these things. And this kind of brings me to my suggestion for next year and for going forward is that the venue for the MLR Championship game should be announced ideally with the schedule. If not, then probably in the first week of the regular season. Now, I understand for that to happen, they need to kind of be planning it now, but there's not that much going on right now. It's the off season. That's just my suggestion. I think that would really benefit a lot of fans, potentially traveling fans, to know exactly where and when it's going to be way in advance. Finish up. I just want to touch on the fan fest and finish with a positive, because this fan fest they did, this kind of 2-day festival of rugby almost. That's something new for MLR. MLR haven't done that before. In previous years, they've got kind of quite big musical acts to come and play either before or after the game. We've had Marshmallow, we had Dropkick Murphys, and DJ Diesel, Shaq. This year, they didn't really go for a big musical act, which I do think helped with the ticket price. I will say the ticket price for the final was way down. So this fan fest, 2 days of activities, 2 days of festivities, Friday and Saturday at the Guild in Rhode Island. Got to give a shout out. Their Pawtucket Beer Hall is beautiful. It's kind of set in sort of like an old industrial sort of factory, a group of buildings, and there was a big courtyard. Amazing venue for this kind of thing, and it was really really good. I don't really have a bad word to say about the fan fest. I think that was fantastic. um I was there pretty much my entire stay. I spent most of the time on Friday just kind of catching up with people who I had either not seen before and only interacted with online, or I hadn't seen since either going to Quincy, or they came up for an Arrows game back in the day, or at the 2023 final. So that was really good fun and really good to see a load of people from all kinds. I saw the Fantasy Ruckers, I saw Eagle American Rugby Rising, I saw Will Hooley, Alex Corbisiero. They were all there. They were hosting panels. I think these panels were really really good, informative. Interviews with both the captains of the Free Jacks and SaberCats and the head coaches of this Free Jacks and SaberCats, as well as panels on the growth of the league. There was like an innovation scrum. I did not get an invite to that. As well as, it was a beautiful day. It was nice and warm. The beer was really, really good. And the food was really, really good. So just a big party, kind of, everyone's excited. No one knows what's going to happen in the game tomorrow. It was fantastic. But that was just the Friday. The big party was on the Saturday before the game. And it was rammed at the Guild. It was so full. And there was, to their credit, MLR, there was much more going on than on the Friday. Loads of activations. There was a cornhole tournament. There was all kinds of food trucks, although I will say not enough food trucks. I think I waited for about an hour for some food, but it was rammed. I'm talking probably thousands of people there, just enjoying the festivities, having a few drinks, getting some food, getting, there was face paint, there was a load of free stuff. Had my first no cap soda, which was really, really nice, and didn't have to pay for it, so it tasted even better. There was a company called Rhode Island Customs that did these hats. You could choose out your kind of template and put whatever patches you want. There was a couple of MLR related patches, obviously this one, and there was also, MLR Championship 2025. So I've got that to put on somewhere else on the hat when I feel like it. That was really good fun. I enjoyed that. Obviously, I bought a shirt. Um, Really, really good fun there. They had the shield there. It was good fun and yeah, just great. And then they had shuttle buses running to the game. Could do with a couple more shuttle buses, and I'm not sure how many people they expected or what the traffic was like, to be honest. But all in all, the fan fest is superb. I would really, really like MLR to keep doing that in future championship games. So just to finally wrap up, I had a great time. Believe it or not, despite, whatever it is, 20 minutes of rambling, I had a fantastic time. I always like going to see MLR games. It always makes me miss the Toronto Arrows, but if I get to see one game a year, I'm glad it was the final. Game was superb, venue was superb, FanFest was superb. I just think that they need to have the championship in a more easily accessible location, or if they're going to have it in a more left field location, then announce it way more in advance. That's, I think, key to planning and getting fans there. So I'm finally done rambling. That was my thoughts on the 2025 MLR Championship, both the venue, the game, the stadium, all the the festivities surrounding that. Please let me know if you were at the game, what you thought of all the festivities, what you went to, what you didn't go to, what you missed out on, what you really, really enjoyed. I'd love to get some other fans' thoughts on this. I'm a diehard fan, and if you're watching a video of some guy sitting in a chair talking about the championship game, you're a diehard fan too. So thank you very much for watching, especially all this way through. And there'll be some more videos as the off season goes from this channel. And keep your eye out on MLR Stats or narrugbydb.com for plenty of content as we head to 2026.